You have to take a day off or you're a slave. I don't care how much you love what you do, or I would do science all day long. I built telescopes, I launched rockets into space. I've been to the highest points in South America. I've been to the South Pole, but that's an addiction. I know billionaires, they can't stop working. You're a billionaire. Like, what are you talking about? You have to do this. You want to do that, but that doesn't mean that you're not a slave.
Thank you so much for making time, Brian.
It's my pleasure, Ken. Yeah, I've been following you since we got in touch, I guess, last summer. It's been a year. We've been meaning to meet up.
You were one of the first people I messaged originally.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love what
You're
you do.
a fascinating guy.
I do. You know, I say there's a saying, live to impress yourself. And my dad's dead now. I can't impress him, but he made a big impact in my life. And now it's just about, my kids. I want to impress them and make a good role model for them and trying to do all sorts of fun stuff. And just, we only get a short time on this little chunk of rock spinning around a star. Got to enjoy it.
I know. I love what you said about how hard it is to commit to one family, one relationship, one woman, especially having two little boys. It's so tough to find time for each other, especially right now because they have 5 months and 3 years.
You're in the middle of it.
I'm in the middle, so we have to fight even for like an hour at night.
It's brutal, right?
When they're finally down, you breathe and you can relate a little bit. We stop watching TV because otherwise
that's right.
We will never connect to each other anymore. And I bought a little barrel sauna, so we just sit in front of each other and we have like half an hour of like where we just trying to like decompress and talk because all day you're just busy helping your kid, getting their needs, their attention, their education, watching out for them. I mean, they always constantly need you, especially the mom.
That's right.
So I try to just assist and then at night trying to connect. And I really love what you said about that there's so many people that like look down upon this committing to one woman and you want to be this alpha male who attracts like hundreds of women.
Right.
But it's much harder to commit to one woman. I feel like, especially once you achieve this like guru status, where of course women are like throwing themselves at you.
I don't know about that personally. I mean, I for a physicist maybe, but no, it's I think about it like the deepest relationship, the most like intense and depth of a relationship you can have is when you commit to one person.
Yeah.
People think it's going to be diversity and finding a whole bunch of things, and if that were true, then like Hugh Hefner and all these like playboys, they'd be the happiest guys on earth. And you look at them and they're miserable. No one's there by their side when they die except for the hose that they pay to be around them. And it's sad, but a lot of what life is about now is external metrics. Like, I want to be like you, like, our friends, mutual friends, like Andrew Huberman or somebody like that, or other podcasters, Tim Ferriss, Lex Friedman, friend of mine, and Andrew Tate. I don't know him personally. I'm not friendly with him. But these guys get all the attention because they have the flashy stuff, the stuff that you can see, the Rolexes, the fast cars, the multiple women, the Dan Bilzerian, people crowding around these guys. But what you can't see is how lonely they are. Because there's no doubt that they're showing that stuff off. A, it's to prove and to make an image, and then that's fine. People make a living off it. But when it's collecting objects, like I always say, if you want true happiness, the way to achieve true happiness is to do things. And I'll try to like explain what I mean, but do things that if they got taken away from you would devastate you. So think about like the happiest times in your life, like you're with your kids, you're with your wife, and I'm not even going to say it because it like makes me tear up and I get emotional thinking about it. But every person who's a parent knows their worst fear. That's all I'm going to say because I don't like ruminating on it. That tells you that being a parent is the most important thing you could do because you're doing the thing that if it was taken away from you would cause you the most pain, such that you wouldn't want to live. And I think about that every day. I'm like, I get to commit to one person who I love more than anybody. And I've got these beautiful kids that she's given me, God gave me, if you like. And that's my mission. And everything else is fun. I'm not going to lie. It's fun to have the trappings and do the stuff. And the kids look up, I got one of the silver ones. You got a gold one, the diamond one probably coming next. But my kids love that. And, they're looking up to you. They're like, wow, you're going out with Ken today? That's pretty impressive. But for me, it's like, I can't say I do everything I do for them. I have an ego. definitely narcissistic at some level. But at the bottom line, that's the most important thing. Commit to one person. That sounds beautiful. That nighttime ritual. You know, you hear, oh, what's Andrew Huberman's morning ritual, right? And it's like, no, nighttime ritual. I bond with my wife. We sit in bed. We do a 4-step process. Just hold each other's hands, talk about our day, educate ourselves, give a little maybe corrective advice. What was it like? We could do better. And that's the most beautiful part of the day. But the problem is it only lasts for 20 minutes. you get a little more time because you only have 2, but maybe you'll get more.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about it like that. Because if your IG account goes away, it sucks, but it's not devastating.
Yeah.
You know, if you lose your car, I mean, it sucks too, but it's not going to make you kill yourself.
Right.
But if, I mean, your children, your health, my wife, I mean, that is true happiness where it really lays. And I think, I don't know if you watched the new Arnold documentary on Netflix.
I saw parts of it, I haven't watched
but
it.
It's crushing that, like, the one thing, he lost his family. And you can see him, he's like 70, he's with his like farm animals, and he's like, I want all these things, and I'm like an idol to an icon, right? But I lost that one thing. And it's really sad to witness that now, that like a lot of people that didn't achieve so much have that.
Right.
You know?
And he would trade everything.
Yeah.
You know, to be in that situation, to be you. He would trade everything to be your age, to be another Austrian, right? Another Austrian fitness guy. He would trade everything. And that's the way I like to think about it. What would
Mike won't a little bit up. Yeah. Perfect.
What would 70-year-old Brian want to tell Brian right now? Because I'm the healthiest I'm going to be. You know, I'm going to hopefully get in better shape, whatever. You're going to give me some tips after the show. My body will hit your gym. I want to hit that up, do some squats. But mentally, you know, financially, this is like the peak. And you're younger, so you're moving into that. But I'm envious because you had kids when you were young. I had kids when I was in my, mid, late 30s. Yeah. So they'll be older when I'm older, and that's fine. But I had kids, and I look at all these influencers now, and I see these young men, and they're like, they want to be, whatever, the Andrew Tates, Andrew Hubermans, whatever. And I'm like, okay, but just, don't adopt it unless you want to take everything in their life, their pain, their suffering, the things that they've been through. People look at, I had a great mentor, he passed away last month, Jim Simons, one of the wealthiest people in the world, multi-billionaire, started 3 different, companies, hedge funds, philanthropy, scientist, extraordinary person. He funds the research that I do, or did. He passed away. He had 2 sons that died. 2 sons that died in different accidents as young men. Can't even relate to it. And how he survived. He's just like this stoic, just incredible individual. But would I trade places to be the 50th richest guy in the world? Absolutely not. But I wouldn't trade places with anyone besides me. And I always felt in high school I wasn't like super popular. I still have friends, but people tell me, Brian, this is the best time of your life. And I was like, God forbid. Like, if this peaks in high school, I know we were talking about where you went to high school, same as my brother-in-law. But the fact is, it may have been good, may have been fun, but can't compare to where you're at now.
No, it's like, especially with my second child, I really enjoy every moment, because with my first one, I complained and
you're trying to stay alive.
I thought like this will never end. He's never gonna grow up. You feel like you're stuck, and you lose yourself, and you lose everything you have, and your career, and your time, and suddenly the world is not is not about you anymore. And that's like the best thing. And I think all this stupid shit that's happening right now is from people that don't have children.
Yeah.
If you don't have children, you do not grasp the idea of what life is if it's not about you. It's not about my pronouns. It's not about me being mentally ill. I have to work. I'm a dad, bro. I have to show up. Nobody gives a shit how I feel. I need to be there, and I need to hold this thing together, and this makes me a better person.
Yeah. You have a purpose outside of yourself.
Yeah.
And think about why you mentioned like the mother is more important. It's true. It's 100% true. I mean, fathers do work for, 5-10 minutes if we're lucky, to make the baby. The mother's 9 months, right? And since the ancient times of Aristotle and the philosophers of old, they used to say things like, it's not a wonder why the children always love the mother more. I mean, sorry guys out there, still be dads, still, marry a good woman, or, vice versa if you're a woman, find a good man. But the fact is, why do the kids love the mother more? Why does the mother love the kids more than even the husband? Because she sacrificed physically. She got big. She lost her body. She did all the different things. But also, she would suffer more. It actually grew inside of her. And so the fact is that, of course you do. And that means, you ever see a parent, God forbid, they have a kid who's got a deformity, maybe he's mentally, has a mental challenge or a physical challenge or whatever, and they have other kids, like brothers and sisters of that child, but that child is always special to them. It's even more special in some ways than the other kids because they have to sacrifice more. The lesson, you love that which you sacrifice for. It's the same thing. Commit to something. Commit to a woman. Commit to a profession. Commit to being excellent at something. And whatever it is, I don't care if it's TikTok, Instagram, whatever. If you're committing to it and you're making it, this is my profession because I have to acquire the skills, the talent, the resources to support a family. God, that's your mission from God.
And how sickening is it that now we have this prerogative that women need to do a career and that they're not worthy if they just stay at home and do the hardest job in the world, right? Which is raising these young toddlers.
It's not just the hardest, it's the most important.
The most important.
True.
There's nothing more important than every minute. Like I try to really tell myself every time there's like they whine, they cry, they're like on the floor throwing them a tantrum. I'm like, this matters. This is where you put in the work. Like these are the moments will go. You will be in silence, alone, old at home, and like wishing that somebody would draw on your freaking wall. You wish somebody would fuck up your whole living room because there's gonna be just silence and this voice in your head is gonna be so loud. So it just. I love it.
I saw this graph, and it's like amount of time you spend with different people. So how much time did you spend with your parents? How much time do you spend with your siblings, with your friends, with your wife, with your kids? And everything's like peaking. Like the kid's peaks when he's 18, then he moves out of the house, right? So you get this precious thing. And so for me, I'm Jewish, so we celebrate every Friday night. We have the Sabbath, the Shabbat. We have wine, we have bread, we talk, we have conversation, and it's lovely. And I'm like, I count things. If someone asked me to go to Europe to give a conference, to give a speech, even if I'm getting paid a lot of money to do it, I say, like, is it over a Friday or Saturday? If it is, I have to think really hard. Because if it is, that's 1/10% of the time I get with my child in that precious moment that we call the Sabbath. And I'm not willing to give that up unless you pay me a lot of money or there's something in it for me. And so a lot of times and this has been so powerful, saying no. I'm sure you've had this experience too. You get so many inbound things. You say no to a lot of stuff. And when you say yes to something, you're looking at your son and you're saying to him, or in my case, I have daughters too, I look at them and I'm saying, I prefer this thing to you. I'm not going to do that for almost anything. It has to be really important. Family, close friends, someone who needs something. If it's just money, sorry, I can make money. I can never make that time back.
And I just think nobody teaches that anymore. It's not a value that I see like on Netflix or in school or even from my own dad. It was never like, hey, you gotta like bring life into this world. You need to find the woman of your dreams and create a family. Like it's more about like making a lot of money, being a YouTuber, being famous, being rich, especially being rich, right? Like
absolutely.
That's like the main goal is followers and money, and not like how many kids do you have,
right? Which is the true resource. Look at the most popular, longest lasting show on television is The Simpsons, which I love. I used to watch it. I don't watch it anymore. It's kind of woke and a little bit too annoying for me. But anyway, I watched it for 30 years. Now it's in its 40th year. Okay, what does it depict? It's a doofus dad who doesn't know what he's doing. The kids are smarter than the dad. They talk back. The wife is like doing her own thing, and she has her own adventure. Whatever, that's fine. And look, all the power to a woman who could do both. I think I can't do it. I'm just saying, maybe I'm opposed to it. I cannot do both. I cannot, do family as well as I can do, if I dedicate to it as my career. I have to sacrifice one thing. I can't multitask. My wife, Ivy League educated, brilliant woman, talented woman, artistic, all the stuff, she gave it up, and it's the most rewarding thing, and she wouldn't change 1 second of it. And I think about that. Like, again, do the things that would devastate you if they're gone. So would it devastate you, again, like I had this happen when I was on, I have very few followers compared to you, but like on TikTok, on Twitter rather, for a long time, before Elon took it over, I wanted to get a verified blue check mark, okay? And I'm a tenured full professor at one of the top universities in the world. I've started multiple experiments, like total research amount of about $200 million to my name, 200 papers, 4 books I've written. I've gotten honorary degree on a speech. I've done a tremendous amount of stuff. They wouldn't give it to me because I've been associated with things that were against their woke narrative at the time. I'd done things for other YouTube channel like Jordan Peterson and I'd been on, things that they considered misinformation, Joe Rogan. And so I couldn't get a blue check. I kept applying. And, I'm not ashamed to admit it. I was like, what can I do I was written about in the New York Times, whatever. It didn't matter. They were never going to give it to me. It was blocked. And then all of a sudden, Elon takes over. He's like, for $8 a month, you can get the blue check mark. So I was like, I wasted probably like 10 hours of my life, writing to Twitter, getting references, shooting my universe, and it was a total waste. And I started to think, well, what am I worshiping now? Well, and then it was YouTube. I want to get to 100,000. I want to get to 1 million. But what if like someday they just do away with that? And it's just like whatever. Everyone gets a gold plaque or a diamond plaque or what, who cares? I'm not going to be PewDiePie. I'm not going to be T-Series. So why am I aspiring to these things? It's because it's like, it's easy, it's fun, it's a distraction, but it's not real. And again, I'm preaching to the choir here, but you only have one chance to raise your kids. And if you don't, someone else will. And it may be even, someone that you don't respect and don't like and don't have the values that you like. And I struggle with that. My wife and I struggle with that. How do we balance the values that we want for our kids, the time that we want to spend, but also we need our own identities because we'll go crazy. So like, I don't watch TV either. I watch the San Diego Padres, which is like torturous because, they never win. But that's about it. I watch that. Maybe I'll scroll YouTube, TikTok in the night, and then I go to bed because I got to be up in the morning. Someone's got to take them to school. Someone's got to make them lunches with me and my wife. And we don't have help doing that around the clock, So yeah, I think this is an age where people worship. They're worshiping things that have never existed before. Blue check marks, followers. Imagine trying to describe to your great-great-great-grandfather, like what TikTok is and like how do you amass 15 million followers? You couldn't do it. Like they just couldn't comprehend. Who cares? But now, it rightfully so. And again, I don't begrudge anyone who makes a living doing it. I've been on big shows, as you know, a friend, Amber Rose, who you may know, she lives in town here. I wrote to her before I came up here. She's like, but you get so much scrutiny. I want to ask you this question because I don't get that many chances to talk to somebody.
Anything.
So there's a famous book called Animal Farm by George Orwell. And it talks about, it's basically an allegory for communism, like how bad communism was and it made people like treat things. But there's a couple characters, they're all animals, but they represent people like Winston Churchill rather, and Roosevelt. But there's one character who's a pig, and then there's a donkey, and the pig is talking to the donkey. And the pig says, I have this short little tail, can't do anything. You have this beautiful tail, and it's long to the donkey, and the donkey's like waving it in the breeze, and it's lustrous like my wife's beautiful hair. Oh, anyway, and the donkey says, yeah, the Lord gave me a long tail to swat away the flies, but I'd rather not have the flies and not need the tail. So I want to ask you, as a podcaster, do a podcast, what do you regret? Like, what would you change about it? Do you regret the flies? You get a lot of negative attention, I'm sorry to say, and it's hard, must be hard for you. Do you sometimes question it and say, like, why am I doing this? Or is it just like the good outweighs the bad? My thumb's rather occupied right now holding up good old Carl Sagan, but yours is free to push that like button. And don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us with the algorithm. Now back to the episode.
I love it. I love the feedback. I feel like, I don't know, when I started Candy Can, I call myself the unicorn because it is against the crowd. It's always been. And back in the day, that was like this poster right here. It was dressing pink. It was in Austria, like dressing pink is like the most outrageous thing that you could do. Right. I mean, now like you get celebrated because the narrative has shifted. Yeah. So that's why I'm wearing like a Trump hat now, because it's much more fun. But Candy Can is always about questioning everything and also like taking things not that serious and like making a little bit trolling people about like their stuck up opinions about everything. Right. So for me, if I don't hit negative feedback, you're kind of like you don't get the crowd that you're supposed to. Kind of, because people even hate like Justin Bieber. Yeah, you're just not reaching enough people. So I would worry more not getting negative feedback because I'm not reaching enough people at this point. I just have my main crowd that celebrate me, but that's not what Candy Can is like a mirror to society and what's happening right now. And I just trigger certain emotions, and it's never. I would be more worried not getting negative emotions. And I also, like, I don't know, I grew up with no internet, and then I saw the internet occur, And I always had a very healthy relationship to it, where I can really be like, everybody I've ever met, I've never had a bad encounter in my life, really.
Yeah.
Everybody,
That's
if
wonderful.
you sit down with somebody and you talk, there's so much, we're all one. We're all in this together. And we all have no idea what's actually happening. Like, we
Right.
don't understand our heart and our brain
Right,
and
it's
our
the
body
matrix.
and the family. And when you watch somebody give birth, I mean, it's all a miracle. And it's so, we think we have things figured out, but we actually don't. So when people hate online, it's just somebody not really figuring things out, and it's all good. Yeah.
Who do you look to, since there's, it's a power law, right? There's 10 times fewer people that are 10 times bigger than you, and so on and so on, right? So so there's way more people I can ask advice from than you can ask advice from. Like, who mentors you? Who like challenges you, inspires you, makes you want to be better at what you do? Or, how does that work for you? Because there's so few people that are above you, in terms of status, at least in this internet crazy world.
I don't know. Ever since I started the podcast, I had really getting the chance to talk to somebody is like, especially now that everybody's on their phone and you don't sit down with anybody anymore.
Right.
I even started doing podcasts with my wife just so I
know,
could
I've
get
seen
her
it, yeah.
for 2 hours with no phone.
I know,
because
I love it.
this society is so.
I told my wife I got to do that.
We're
Yeah.
always like this, constantly thinking back and forth and never present. So for me, a podcast is like, I love how Joe Rogan always puts it. It's like almost like you get this window where you get like to connect to somebody. And
Yeah.
that's why I don't do virtual.
Yeah.
Because I don't want no devices and looking at a screen for 2 hours. I'm good.
Yeah.
I want to see you. I want to feel your energy. I want to feel your like
Totally
what you're
different,
about.
yeah.
And like if I can't see you, then I'll just wait. I've done months with no podcast.
Right.
Because like if I don't get to see you, then I'm good.
No, it started 10 months ago, right?
Yeah.
We met each other online.
So for me, it's the best thing, and I would say like, man, Tim Kennedy,
Yeah.
he doesn't have it like financially or only famous. He has it all figured out, like the family, the fame, the money.
Business, yeah.
You can't just win in one part in your life. You gotta like you be a little bit spiritual, have some sort of like purpose. He got it very figured out. Where some people, they're just a good yogi, or they're just a good nutritionist, or they're just a good athlete, but they don't have the family. They lack. And you cannot only win in one point. You gotta be whole as a man to really impress me. So when I met him, I was very, and how humble he is, and how much love and how much compassion he has, and how willing he is to talk to me, even though I look like a jerk online,
No.
So for me, it was very surprising. He's like a black jiu-jitsu, and I was like, holy shit, I was sweating. And we did a session and then the podcast, and it was like so crazy. But then also I admire people, of course, like Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
I mean, I've learned more on Joe Rogan than I learned my whole school career.
Yeah.
I
look at him and I see, this guy's a family man. He's got daughters. Like, nobody knows their names. Nobody knows his wife's name. Nobody knows, but, I was supposed to see him in April for the eclipse of the sun that was going through Austin. And I made a point, to kind of invite him. And I was going to have like him and Jordan Peterson and Lex Friedman and Eric Weinstein. I get everybody together in Austin. And at the end, he's like, my kids don't really want to travel today. So like, all right, fine. I guess, but I was glad that he had that priority. And he was just like, whatever, it's like, he's very happy-go-lucky and things. But if you look at his background, he had a very tough relationship with his dad. His dad recently came out, did some kind of negative attention and press on him. But he's another guy who's just like, you go to a studio, all business. He's super well, prepared. He's got a whole industry there, whisks you from place to place, and then you're gone. And he, you might not ever see him again. He may text you the next day. But he is, he's kind of exemplifying what I think a good role model is. It's a guy who's financially successful, family successful. You don't hear about tabloids. Think of how many girls he could get. He's got the most popular, for now until Ken takes off. It's the most popular English language speaking thing. I don't know. Do you dub this into like Austrian? Like, you should, man. That would be great. Maybe YouTube can do it for you. But the point is, you get to that level, all the opportunities come up. But he's just kept it together, and there's not like some big scandal. They always try to get him and say, "Oh, he denied COVID, or he does this, or he has conspiracy theorists on." I don't approve of everyone he has on, but he doesn't need my approval, right? But the point is, like, is he living a balanced life? Is he happy? And I think that's what you want to ask for. And you see all these business guys or like, some guys that just do the podcast, all they do. And I think that they're profoundly unhappy. And I worry, again, I've got boys and, besides me, I think one of the most kind of macho, masculine things you can do is care about other boys in your life, not in a weird way. And unfortunately, Catholic Church and Boy Scouts and all sorts of queer stuff has been bad for boys and men having relationships that aren't familial. But, we have people in my temple that, they lost their dad. And, I try to always look out for them and just like invite them on family stuff and teach them how to fish or, do whatever. Just do some manly stuff, go out in the woods in San Diego and enjoy it. And it makes me feel like, wow, this is great. I know I have my own boys, but mentoring someone else's boys who could never do it because he's not alive anymore. It fills me with a sense of masculinity, which I think is missing,
No, and there's so many single moms out there, and I can. When you see my toddler with me, he has this stoicism. He's emotionally intact, and he knows without me like punishing him or pressing him. He goes with me to the gym. He reads his books. He watches me. He's very observant. And then with the mom, he just emotionally lets go and he throws himself and he has this release. And we all know that, like, where we just want to be held like a baby.
Yeah.
And he doesn't do that with me. And it gives that nice yin and yang, that balance. And they need that.
They do.
And they can't only be with me because it's just too much. And it's like, it's good to have a mom, but also you can't always like emotionally just be so whiny and like so like let go. Like you need both.
I was raised by a single mother for a couple of years until, between my parents got divorced. My father abandoned me and my older brother and moved out to the West Coast when I was on the East Coast. Started a whole new life, got remarried and so forth. So I didn't see him for like 17 years. And my mom, before she got remarried, she was a single mom. It was just the three of us, my older brother, me, and her. And it sucked. It wasn't easy for her. She had to work, take care of us. She had, when she was dating, it's like bringing different men into the household. It's disruptive for the boys, the 7-year-old boy to see, like, what are you doing with my mom? Like, eventually she got married and that was fine. And they stayed married for a long time. They got divorced later, but that's another story. But the point is, it sucks. It sucked to be a single father too.
And it's not cool to have multiple women. It's very disruptive. You don't understand that.
Yeah.
You cannot understand that as a young boy growing up. It's weird. It's not right. It's not cool at all.
100%.
And it's just sickening. And these are daughters too that get treated like objects.
Yeah.
And it's not cool.
How do you feel? Here's another personal
and
question.
people love that in rap songs and on media. It's all they talk about.
Oh, it's glorified.
Glorified.
It's like worship.
Yeah.
Let me ask you another personal question. So you're living in LA. It's capital of like, Sin City, kind of modern day Sodom and Gomorrah here. Driving past. God love them. Pride flags left and right. It's Pride Month here, right? Happy Pride. And we're driving through neighborhoods and just seeing kind of what's going on. Then there's Hollywood with all their materialism so you obviously could live anywhere and you could do your business and you could do your channels and promotion. You chose to live here. It's a high tax state. It's a oppressive regulation state. We've got Governor Newsom. Homelessness is out of control, insane. Why do you stay here when you could go, literally, you could go to Europe. You still have I'm sure you could go back to Austria. They'd love to have you back.
I don't know. For me, I don't know. Growing up in Austria, I always wanted to be a part of culture. Like the fame, the money, everything was whatever, but I used to watch the Oscars or the MTV Music Awards when it was still cool.
Yeah.
And I used to feel like I'm missing out. Like everybody's watching American culture and you're not a part of it. And for me, I wanted to be a part of culture. I wanted to be influential and a positive force for free thinking, for being free. I wanted to free myself and to free other people. And I feel like in Austria you cannot do that because you don't have a German Joe Rogan,
right?
A German-speaking Joe Rogan. Maybe AI can make that happen, but for now, you don't have a German Andrew Tate, right? or you need.
It's conformity. There's more freedom here for sure.
Yeah. And like there's always people talking shit about America and things are bad, obviously, but also it is the greatest force of freedom ever that I have
100%.
ever felt in my life. You know, the cars, the guns, the land, the spirit. Like
people,
going to school here, like how we talked about going to high school here, I was like, on top of the world. I was like, this is so amazing. I love this how I feel here.
Yeah.
How I feel in LA.
It's unique.
And no pronoun craziness, propaganda, political thing, homelessness can take that away from it.
Yeah.
You know?
So you're a glass half full guy. You're looking at like,
yes.
And I felt like this. My older brother, you know, I'd mentioned him a few minutes ago. He moved out of California last year. He couldn't take it anymore. He had kids that were like valedictorian of their class. Didn't get into a single Ivy League school. Perfect SAT scores. Just genius. My nephews, God love them, they're brilliant. And he was just like, no. But if they were, you know, a different minority or persecuted or whatever, they would have gotten in or done their other thing. But also, even like UC schools where I teach, you know, it wasn't like easy for them to get in. There's a lot of regulations and stuff. So he moved out, and I felt like, and he was like, come with me. You know, he's moved to a freer state. You know, I'm not going to say exactly where, but he moved to a freer state. And he's like, come with me. You're like, why are you staying there? You know, your older brother, your best friend. You know, he was my male role model when my mom was single, right? You know, so I only had him. He's 3 years older. And he taught me so much about what it's like to be a man, got married first, had kids first, you know. So he's like, come with me, you know, let's be free. And I thought, well, you know, besides the fact that my wife would probably kill me, I mean, she's a multiple generation San Diegan, Californian, and I have a whole community, I have a job, I have a laboratory, I have students and everything. But besides that, you know, I felt like if you can't be happy here, like he wasn't happy here, I kind of felt like it was on him. I almost feel like if you, like in this land of opportunity, and LA and Southern California is like the opportunity capital of the land of opportunity. If you can't be happy here, sorry to say, I kind of think you're a loser. Like there's so much to offer. It's like Gavin Newsom doesn't, even though he's my boss, literally he's my boss. I mean, he controls the regents of the California State University system that I'm a member of. Right? I'm a public employee. If he makes me happy or unhappy, as opposed to like squeezing my kid's hand on the beach in San Diego, I mean, I'm a freaking loser if I allow anyone to take my sovereignty of being a man and being happy and providing for me. No, so I can be free here. Now, someday there may come a time when maybe it's not so free, and then I would reserve the opportunity and the option. Maybe I would need to move to another state, but I was born an American. I'm going to die an American. And even I like to point out, California was incorporated on my birthday, September 9th, 1849. So it's you know, just meant to be.
No, and I also don't believe in running away.
Yeah.
I don't believe, that's why also like obviously like doing all these podcasts, at the end of the day you feel like you just should like go to the woods anyways and like, you know, turn all the electricity off and like throw your iPhone as far as away, break it, leave it far away, right? Flush it, grow your own vegetables, hunt your own meat. You go completely crazy, you know? So I don't know, I'm a front man. Like I always like to be on the front of problems, and if I don't like to like disengage and like run away from things. Like if it's bad here, I'll stay right here and I'll fight from right here, you know?
Yeah, it's like a Buddhist saying, you know, wherever you go, there you are. You know, you're the only constant in your life. You're the only one who's going to be there like the moment you die. Like, yeah, hopefully you'll be surrounded by people that love you, replaying memories in your mind of the happiest days of your life. But there's a finite amount of time. But you're all you have with you. When you're driving, I'm driving up here, I'm listening to music, I'm watching your old shows, kind of getting to know stuff, thinking about what I want to talk about. I did another podcast on my way up in Orange County. And I'm like, I'm alone, and there's people that I miss, and I'm so glad that I miss them, and I'm going to get to, like, think about it. You kind of like, I get to put to bed, like, the most important people who have ever lived in human history, the people that give me, and they just do it for free. Like, I don't have to pay them to do it. Like, I give everything, right? And as I said, when I'm 80, 90, 100 on my deathbed, you could drop $1 trillion on me. It's not going to do anything for me. It's going to be the memories that you retire on and the dividends that you paid by virtue of the relationships that you made. And that's why I feel like, you it's kind of like a gift. So I said I'm Jewish. So we do every, Friday and Saturday night, we do this ritual where we disconnect. I don't tweet. You never know. I don't go on Instagram, TikTok. I don't do anything. I mean, I have a team and they do stuff for me, but it's not like you're up. I'm explaining to you how social media works, right? But the point is, I don't generate stuff. I rest and I do my own work, which is family, spiritual, cohesiveness, community, like being a leader in the Jewish community in that sense. And it gives me that refresh once a week. If I could tell any one piece of advice, like graduation tips or whatever, it's the, season of graduation, Father's Day season, it would be take a day. You have to take a day off or you're a slave. I don't care how much you love what you do, or I would do science all day long. We haven't even talked about my science. I hope we get into it. I built telescopes. I launched rockets into space. I've been to the highest points in South America. I've been to the South Pole, Antarctica. Like almost 1,000 people have ever been there. And I would do that for free. I get paid. I'm a state employee, so I get paid. But I would do it for free. Don't tell Newsom. I hope you're not watching, Gavy boy, because you'll dock my pay. I know you need to pay off the debt. But that's an addiction, right? I don't care what it is. Like people, I know billionaires, they can't stop working. I'm like, come down, hang out. We'll go in the mountains, go. I can't. I'm like, you're a billionaire. Like, what are you talking about? You have to do this. You want to do that, but that doesn't mean that you're not a slave. And so in the Torah, in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it says you shall take this time off because God rested. I mean, God is, if you believe in him or not, I don't care. But the point is, if this omnipotent being had to rest to take time off, then all the more so a fragile human being is just made of dust and, a couple of elements, compounds and whatever. We need to rest. And that's time for me to bond with the people that matter most. And it's not the Instagram followers. It's not that. It's going to be the people that I cultivate a life with. And so that's my one piece of advice is just like, do the things that would damage you if they're taken away, but also lean into rest. And it's not being lazy, like just watching a football game. That doesn't count. It's like active rest. Like, how do you do stuff, working out, go for a hike, go for a swim, surf, do what you do, get outside, because those memories get imprinted, especially in our kids. And that's what they're going to remember. And that's all you are. All we are memories. Like, do you know the name of your great-great-grandfather? Probably not. Like 3 generations, that's all we get. We get our 3, like we get your grandfather, you probably know who your grandfather was, and you get hopefully your grandson, maybe a great-grandson. You started young, you sly devil, man. You started younger than me. So you'll get a great-grandchild, God willing. So maybe 6, 7 generations, that's it. That's it. No one else will ever know your name. And that should be like motivational, not to be like, oh, this is meaningless. No, I got to invest in those 7 generations spanning plus and minus 100 years or so. I got to invest in that because that's all that's left. That's all we know about until we get the matrix and upload everything.
No, and you're saying that it doesn't really, like in a beautiful way, it doesn't matter what you do. It does matter, but also you should just not take yourself so serious, Like you don't need to be afraid of negative comments online. It doesn't matter really, because if you do what you believe in, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
If you fight for your truth, if you live for your kids, if you raise your family and nobody sees the time you put in and all the work, but you enjoy every moment with them, that's all that matters.
That's right.
And like Joe Rogan, if you do this podcast and it doesn't make money, but you enjoy doing that, if you would do it anyways for free,
Exactly.
I always tell people like social media is not for everybody because I love shooting TikToks. I do that shit for free.
I know.
I would do that any day because it's so fun.
For me, it's work.
It was even more fun when we didn't make money, and now you make money. It takes a little bit away even from the fun.
Because you got sponsors.
And it's not as fun anymore because before it was just for fun, 100% for fun, right?
It was pure.
It was pure.
Yeah. It's so amazing. I mean, think about it, like this job that only existed like 6 years ago, at most or whatever, and now it gives meaning to you. It gives you resources to protect your family and to defend, your way of life. It's really incredible, but it's fragile too. You're building this castle, this fortress, but it's on the sand of the beach, and it could go away. Hopefully TikTok will find some way way to get you guys, taken care of. I only have, 200 followers on TikTok, but it doesn't lend itself as well. I mean, I know people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and others do well at it, but for me, it's like, I like the long form stuff. I like the deep conversation. And I made a compromise that I would do things remotely because I started during COVID in 2020. I know that's when you guys, started off like more in earnest in your journey. But for the interviews, it was just like, it was illegal to travel. I mean, basically in this state, they shut down my lab, they shut down my office. So I couldn't have people coming in. I've done more in person lately, but for me, the joy is just like the knowledge, the ideas, because this book, the only other way that you can get like immortality is having something written. Like with a printed word, and the written word goes back 5,000 years, right? The invention of language is uniquely human. It's one of the few things that, like, we share 99% of our chromosomes with freaking chimpanzees, right? So that's not what makes us unique. It's not that we have less hair than a chimpanzee or whatever. No, it's actually that we have language and we can communicate. We can build societies. We can cooperate, and we can have influence in those ways. And there's people having influence over here. But another way you can do it is by using the written word and having the written word as a testament, as a will. You can write your will while you're alive. And then that will contain messages that your great-grandchildren can read. There's no doubt that, like, people will know your voice and stuff. You have so much stuff online and content-wise, but the written word is much more persistent. And there's a law called Lindy's Law. Basically, it means the longer something's been around for, the longer it's likely to last for. So Microsoft Office, as crappy as Microsoft Windows or DOS is, it's been around 40 years. So it's likely to last another 40 years. TikTok has been around 6 years, so it's likely to last at least another 6 years. But maybe not more, might last 6 more months, who knows? So leaning into stuff like printing press, written word, 5,000 years, it's likely to last another 5,000 years. So for me, I wanted to write one book at first, and that was just to give a testimony of what it's like to be a scientist, to aspire to get the diamond plaque of science, which is called the Nobel Prize. That's the highest accolade in all of science. And I claim it's the highest accolade that human beings have to offer. Nobody says, like, who should you vote for president to someone who won a Tony Award. You can't even name their names. But every year they're asking, like, what should we do? What science policies? What technology? What energy policies? What should we adopt? And they ask people that won the Nobel Prize. So that is good, but it also comes with a risk that people will start to worship this the way that people worship followers or worship Oscars and Academy Awards and stuff like that. And just as you look at these Oscar-winning actors, they're not always so happy. Like, look at like Alec Baldwin. Like, the guy doesn't seem super Robert De Niro, like he seems like an angry, pissed-off grandpa, right? He's not like some guy I want to be, when I'm in my 80s. So the point is, there's a danger, and anything that's good is a double-edged sword. It can also be used for something that's bad. And for me, it was fighting this battle that I was always obsessed with wanting to win the Nobel Prize as a kid. That's the only way I thought I could be better than my dad, who was a scientist too, but he never won a Nobel Prize. I felt like after he abandoned me and my brother, I was going to show him by winning a Nobel Prize to prove to him that he should have not abandoned me, my mother, and my brother. Of course, I didn't do that. Spoiler alert, the book's called Losing the Nobel Prize. But it's a memoir. It's a story of what it's like to be a scientist trying to do the ultimate thing, coming up short. And then what do you do after? Like, most of the time you fail in life. You ever notice that? Like, you spend most of your time like aspiring to something, but not actually getting there. And once you, like, you're fit, you're lifting weights, like, if you stop right now, it doesn't matter how much work you did, it would eventually dissipate and you atrophy and you wouldn't have the muscles and you start eating whatever you want. So you have to constantly do that. So you can't be fit forever. You have to constantly work on it. Same with being happy. You can't be happy. You can only become happy. You can only work towards being happy, and then that process of trying to aspire towards happiness becomes a permanent state. But you never reach like, I'm happy, like, because the next day your kid could get a sprained ankle and you're devastated, right? So the point is, in my world, we want to aspire to win these kind of literally golden necklaces like that you wear if you win it. And it's the highest thing you could possibly aspire to. Now, the reason I wanted to win it is because I wanted to understand what happened at the Big Bang. Like, that's my focus of my research. So it was for a good reason, but even good reasons can lead you down the wrong path. And so it's a cautionary kind of autobiography in a sense. My thumb is very busy right now holding up good old Albert, but if yours is free, please go ahead and hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us with the algorithm.
Tell me about your books.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this one here is called Losing the Nobel Prize. Mm-hmm. So it's a memoir of being a scientist. of building a telescope that could see back in time. So when you and I look at each other, I don't see you instantaneously the way you are right this millisecond, nanosecond. Because light, as fast as it travels, it takes a billionth of a second to travel 1 foot. Or 3 billion seconds to travel a meter. So that means I'm seeing you as you were like a few nanoseconds ago. Now, that doesn't make a difference at this kind of scale. But if you look out into the sun and you see the sun, we're not seeing the sun right now. We're seeing it as it was 8 minutes ago. That means, mind-blowingly, the sun could have vanished. Like at this instant, we won't find out for 8 more minutes. Now, the likelihood of that happening is very low, but it's theoretically possible. But there's certainly stars, even in LA, that you can go out and see at night that are no longer there. But they have this tube of light that's been traveling for millions of years, perhaps, coming towards us in different directions. And it's telling us what was that star like a million years ago if it's a galaxy, a billion years ago if it's a galaxy. And it's a time machine. It allows us to look back in time. I invented a type of telescope that could look back to the very beginning of all of time. Not just to the sun, not just to the galaxy, but to the Big Bang. It's called the Big Bang, the origin of the universe. It's a very special telescope. It doesn't use light. It uses microwaves, radio waves, wavelengths that are much longer than what the human eye can perceive. And it needs to do that for technical reasons, but the main focus of the telescope, no pun intended, was to capture the birth of the Big Bang. No one's ever seen it before. We've seen leftovers, imagine the Big Bang is like an explosion. We've seen the heat from the explosion, a couple of milliseconds later, so to speak. But where a firework goes off, there's like that center burst. You want to understand that center, that point of first explosion, and understand, was that the beginning of time? Have you ever thought about this? If time began, then there was a moment, a second ago, that time didn't exist. So does that make sense to think about time when time has a beginning? Everything in life that we've seen, that we've witnessed, you can trace it back to some cause, right? So you were born because your parents had their own Big Bang, 9 months before you were born, et cetera, et cetera. And that goes back 200,000 years, million years to humanity's birth. And the Earth has a Big Bang when it formed. Our sun had a form. Our galaxy had a formation. But so you can always go back in time. But then if the universe began at one point in time, then you can't ask what happened the day before that. It doesn't make sense because the concept of time came into existence on a specific moment. And so we're trying to capture that moment, but we're not sure if it happened. We thought we saw it back in 2014, 10 years ago exactly. We claimed we saw it. It was on the New York Times, CNN, all around the world. We were going to win the Nobel Prize. But it turned out what we saw instead were microscopic versions of this. This is a meteorite. I'm giving it to you, and you give it to your sons. And you can feel it, and it's pretty heavy, right? So you can feel it. It's made of iron, of cobalt, of nickel. And I give these away on my website at briankeating.com to a couple people a month. And it's heavy, it's dense, and it's made from the same material that the Earth is made of, and it's older than the Earth. It's 4 billion years old. So you can have a piece of 4 billion-year-old stuff, and it's amazing to feel it tangibly. But not only is that this landed in Argentina about 1,500 years ago, 2,000 years ago, and then I collect this yours and you keep it. These meteorites also exist in the universe, in the solar system, and in the galaxy. And what we thought we saw as the Big Bang itself was actually an explosion of those, if you think about it. And that was kind of a very depressing moment when we thought we saw the Big Bang, we thought we saw the origin of time, but really we saw basically chunks of rock and dust. As cool as that is, that doesn't tell us about the origin of time, though, does it? So we're back at the drawing board now. We're building a bigger telescope with more capability to see farther back in time and not only look for the thing that we're looking for, which is the Big Bang, but also train the telescope specifically out for those contaminating particles of dust. So we've had to design and reorient our whole modality of thinking. How do we actually obtain the evidence for the Big Bang and the origin of time in a polluted galaxy that's full of this dust and garbage that we want to get rid of? So that's our current challenge. We have a new experiment called the Simons Observatory in Chile, which is that original experiment is at the South Pole. That's shown here. So that's in Antarctica. It's like the middle of Antarctica, 9,000 feet above sea level, pure ice in all directions. It's dark. The sun is down 6 months of the year. Right now it's down. It's like totally dark for every day, every hour, every day until the beginning of September, middle of September. And then it comes up again. And this experiment made this mistake that we claim we did it, and everyone said, "Oh, you're going to win a Nobel Prize," and then it got taken away. Then the second book that I wrote after I started my podcast in 2020, I started a podcast called Into the Impossible. And it's based on a quote, which I like to ask people. I'll ask you this. I'll turn the tables on the podcaster in a minute. But I always ask people, like, what gave you the courage to do the impossible, to go into the impossible? And but for me, it was the fact that I interviewed Nobel Prize winning physicists and scientists on my podcast at UC San Diego. And I wanted to take their lessons of what they did as a scientist and change that so that somebody who was a mechanic in a car dealership or whatever, can they learn things? Because you ever meet someone who's like super smart, but they have no common sense? like a lot of professors are like this. They're like brilliant. They can talk about esoteric stuff and very erudite, philosophical, but they can't like figure out like where the bananas are at the supermarket. Like they're just functionally illiterate and dumb, but they're incredibly brilliant. So I want to say, is it possible to get wisdom from pure knowledge? So I've distilled what they have taught me into 9 lessons. It's kind of based on a book by Tim Ferriss called Tribe of Mentors, where he took the people he interviewed, distilled it, wrote a book about their hottest tips and stuff. But it's really a self-help book on how to be a good communicator, collaborator, how to look at evidence, how to look at not as a science book at all, there's no equations in it, but how to live your life when you're looking for advice on complicated systems that nobody ever tells you about. Like, imagine if you were working, you had a social media manager, your wife or whatever, and they're also kind of your competitor because they want to win the Nobel Prize too. How do you work with somebody? How do you cooperate with a competitor? Those are things that scientists have to do. And always battling for funding, for attention, for credit, for abilities, and it's a game, but it's a very interesting and fun game. So I wanted to distill that into this book, and I'm working on a second edition of it now. I've interviewed 20 people that have won the Nobel Prize so far.
Dang, is the Nobel Prize still what it used to be?
In some fields, in physics, it is. Okay. There's 6 prizes. There's a prize for physics, chemistry. There's a prize for medicine, which is sometimes biology. There's a prize for literature. There's a prize for peace, and there's a prize for economics. And the economics and peace prizes have become not worthless because people still want to win them, because you still get like $1 million and you get huge attention and you're famous for the rest of your life, and you can consult on boards and write books and everything. But they're not what they used to be. They've been given to terrorists. The Peace Prize has been given to terrorists. The Literature Prize has been given to whatever you think, like Bob Dylan or some people from writing like some obscure African poem or something. Whatever. It might be interesting and culturally important, but it's become a little bit politicized. Those 2 prizes.
Woke.
Exactly. And even the science prize are starting to get maybe a little bit with some of their agendas, but mostly it's been purified. There's been some in the medical prize. They gave it to the CRISPR a couple of years ago, and they gave it to the current COVID vaccine. We shouldn't say that. They gave it to the Blovid blacks in ablation, so we don't get YouTube demonetize you. So they gave it to those this past year, which is very controversial. I think people believe that now it's coming out. There are a lot of injuries from it. And so it's become a mixed bag, but it's still in the hard sciences, physics and chemistry. It's still the most prestigious thing you could possibly win.
Okay. And you still want to win it?
Well,
like the Grammys,
Exactly. Yeah. Well,
where Drake is not even showing up to the Grammys and no more.
Yeah, I aspire to be science's
Did
Drake.
they give one Nobel Prize to that girl? Greta
Thunberg? Not yet. No. I predict they will in the next 10 years.
They should.
They're going to give her one. Yeah, that would be the kind of
some credibility.
They gave it to. So we just had graduation at UCSD, and we had Al Gore was there, so he won the Nobel Prize. For predicting the world would, be radically unlivable by 10 years ago. But thankfully, it's been proven wrong. But no, in all seriousness, there are good people that work on the atmospheric chemistry and stuff. But yes, but why did it become politicized? Because it's so valuable and so rare. There are more people in the NBA than have won the Nobel Prize in physics. I mean, like, it's insane to think about it when you consider how few people have it. So anything that's rare, it's like a monopoly. And when you have a monopoly, what does the monopoly most want? Most of all, to keep the monopoly going, so it can keep printing up money and it can keep doing its thing. Well, they don't make money for the Nobel Committee, but they get a lot of attention and they get celebration. And it's like the World Economic Forum. And any of these things, they get prestige by conferring the prizes on other people. So why is Klaus Schwab, famous? So famous that Joe Rogan over his urinal has a picture of. So I'm like staring into Klaus Schwab's eyes. I'm trying to like do my business. It's very unsettling down there in Austin. That guy. So they esteem themselves. They acquire prestige based on who they give it to, not really necessarily what they themselves do.
All right.
Yeah. So, but the science really keeps you busy, and it's the most important thing, other than the family and keeping this sense of like, I get paid to do something I would do for free, and the podcast and the YouTube and whatever. It's fun to do that. I get, I've noticed things change as I got more and more subscribers that. I could get, like, if I wanted to get on Malcolm Gladwell, like a famous author, they wouldn't answer my email, a couple of years ago. Now I've got over, 250,000 subscribers. So I'll just put that in the email headline. And then most people want to talk to somebody that has 250,000, that has had on 20 Nobel Prize winners and 4 Pulitzer Prize winners and has written 4 or 5 books and has a title. But still, there are people that, I don't know if Malcolm will come on my podcast or whatever. I don't know if I necessarily need him to or want him to. But the fact is, getting to talk to people that I want to talk to. So what I do is not just looking through a telescope. That's what got me hooked on science, was looking through a telescope and seeing the moon has craters on it. Like, have you ever seen the moon through a telescope?
I think so.
You think? No, you would know it. Yeah. You haven't.
No,
you
really.
haven't. Okay. You haven't seen Saturn.
One, I guess.
No, I know, but you gotta. Okay, so next time I'm going to bring up a telescope, or you come and visit me in San Diego. We'll get a telescope at my work, and I'll take you outside to the desert. And when you see it, the moon, it's impossible not to feel something that they first felt exactly 400 years ago. So Galileo was the first person to ever take a telescope, which is like a camera, it's just a camera, and look at the sky. Instead of having a detector, it has your eye and it has your retina. And he looked at it and he saw craters, and it allowed him to think a new scientific thought that no one in thousands of years of human history had ever thought, which is the moon is not perfect. It's just like the Earth. It has mountains. He thought it had rivers on it, has canyons on it. It doesn't have water on it, but it had some kind of flowing lava. It's obvious when you look at it, but you can only see it through a telescope. The human eye, for God or whoever designed us, didn't make our eyes powerful enough to see craters. You need to invent something to perfect our understanding of the universe. Another thing you can see are the rings of Saturn. You can see the moons around Jupiter. And I can show you a galaxy. The galaxy is so far away that the light that you'll see when I show it to you left that galaxy 2,500,000 years ago, when humans didn't exist. When there were kind of hybrids of monkeys and men living in Africa, and then we evolved later. And in that time, imagine a tube of light, coming, streaming. It has no other. It's just, you cannot stop it. It's coming inevitably, inexorably. It's coming to your eye, and you get to see it. You cannot help but become a scientist. And that's why I'll get one for your kids, because even a cheap one, even from LA, it doesn't matter. You can see the same craters that Galileo saw in northern Italy in the year 1609 that changed the course of human history. You can't do that with any other, you can't do that with you look at a cell in a microscope. Oh, that's still cool. I'm not going to denigrate that. But when you look through a telescope, you become a scientist. And that's what happened to me. I don't get to do that every day. A lot of times I'm like, how do I get this contractor to not sue or because they stubbed their toe at 17,000 feet, or how do I get some concrete to this place or cover this when you're up at 17,000 feet, the oxygen is half of what it is here. You have to breathe through a cannula, through oxygen that goes into your nose. If you don't, you'll pass out, you could die, you could have a heart attack. So you carry oxygen with you. It's half the pressure here. The sun is so intense, if you have your skin out, you'll get burned immediately. There's powerful lightning strikes, there's snowstorms, there's an active volcano a couple of kilometers away that spews out lava. It's an incredible place, it's very dangerous.
And where is that?
This is in the Atacama Desert, it's northern Chile. So it's in the Andes Mountains. So some of these mountains are 5,200, 7,000 meters high, 6,000 meters high. They're enormous mountains, second only to Mount Everest and the Himalayas. And those kind of experiences that I have, That's very rare. I don't get to go down there that much. It's a big trip, costs a lot of money. There's a lot of safety precautions. You have to take a health test, stress test, heart. If you have a heart attack, you're done because the nearest hospital is an hour plane ride away if you could even get a plane, which you can't. So you're going to die. If you have like a wisdom tooth that starts to, you're going to like go crazy. You're going to evacuate you. So it's a very strictly controlled place. South Pole is even worse. It's even harder to get there. You can only get in or out to the South Pole for a 3-month window in the entire year. And if you miss the last flight in February, you're stuck there until November. Because if a plane lands there, Ken, the gas inside the plane will freeze up. It's so cold. It could be 100 degrees below zero Fahrenheit. So you have that so cold that the fuel will freeze up and the plane will basically break apart. And so these planes cost $100 million, so they don't want to waste a plane just because Ken had a toothache from eating too much candy. So the point is, they're very strictly regulated, but we don't get to go there that much because it's very remote and very difficult to get to. We go there because the views of the sky that we're looking at, the type of wavelengths that we're looking at, are only observable from certain places. You can't do it from here in LA. It's too difficult. It's too much water in the atmosphere and energy in the atmosphere, and it doesn't allow the light from the Big Bang to get through. So that's what we're looking for. But most of the time, it's like, I just hired a new student, and I have to get, she's from India. I have to get this paperwork, and then I have to submit that to the dean didn't agree with it. It's just like crazy. And so the amount of time I get to do science, I heard a study like you play football. Like if you watch the NFL game, it's an hour of clock time, right? But the ball's only moving for 2 minutes. Like, if you think about it, the ball's, it takes 2 seconds to throw it 100 yards. So they could have, the whole 10 passes in 20 seconds or something like that, right? So the amount of elapsed time is very low. But, what we're doing, most of the time we're spending is not doing the cool scientific stuff. It's preparing to do it. That's part of the reason I love my podcast, because when I talk to podcasts, I get to talk to people I want to talk to, not people I have to talk to. And it's another form. I get education from it. I learn about other topics, even though it's science. Like lately, I've gotten very interested in the search for aliens and whether or not aliens exist in the universe. I think that's probably next to what I do, like discovering if time began, is probably the most interesting thing. Are we alone in the universe? Do you think we are? Do you think there are aliens?
I don't know. After listening so long to Joe Rogan, it would be hard. Well, I've really gotten into this, like that we're not the most advanced society that has ever lived, especially with the pyramids and all this technology and the gold, and it feels like there must have been a very advanced society and then something happened for sure. That we are like the pinnacle of advanced society. I can't wrap my head around, because it feels like we have all these things on the planet that we cannot describe where they come from, who made them, why they made them a certain way. They're too perfect, like especially with the pyramids.
Yeah, I mean that's an argument. I've heard that before too. Yeah, the pyramids. I've even seen like some funny depictions. Like if you think the pyramids are cool, imagine that they're just like the tip of this huge obelisk that's like 100 miles deep under the like imagine that. But as far as we know, there's not that. So the challenge with science and where it differs from religion, which is, I'm obviously sympathetic to, but we have this kind of notion of the God of the gaps in religion. Like if you can't understand something, well, that's where God made the intervention. So like, for example, there's no missing link. No one's ever found like a half monkey, like literally a half monkey or ape or hominid, common ancestor, and half human. Like, so that's called the missing link. And only if we found that, then we'd have, but people say, well, it's very rare. Like there's only like maybe 10,000 fossils total in the whole world in every museum. So like, you think you're going to find that one transitional species, like that's too rare. So instead they say, no, God did it. God had a purpose, designed us. And every time you see like code, like here's the matrix, right? So did this come from a mind? Did the code come from a mind? Like, have we ever found like language inside of a cave, like hieroglyphics on the pyramid, right? You could say that, the wind blew some sand and it made these patterns, right? But that's ludicrous. No, like some person chiseled into the stone with the rock and a hammer. So some intelligence is behind the writing. Similarly, they'll say, well, if you get digital information, you have digital information, zeros and ones in your computer and transmitting this over the internet, speed of light. That's also zeros and ones. That traces to a code. It's called binary code, and it gets translated into higher languages. At the end, some person programmed that language, and some person will be decoding that, right? I'm intelligent, I'm speaking a language. You interpret that language, and then that gets transmitted through the whole world. So every time we see information, we like to think that it was created by an intelligent designer who knew how to make that information. So too, when people see DNA is not zeros and ones, it's 0, 1, 2, 3. It's a 4-bit code. It's GCTA. So it's 4 amino acid bases that make up the DNA structure, and they mate in just the right pattern, and that allows replication and storage of information. Some say, well, that's information. You never find information without a mind. So there must have been a designer that made that. So that's an argument called the God of the gaps. If you don't have an explanation for something, God will always be sufficient explanation to cause the phenomena that you observe, right? You could always say, even if I said lightning is caused by clouds rubbing together charged particles, it makes thunder, you could say, no, it's actually God, Thor, and Thor's doing it. No, I can't disprove that. But also, it's not powerful. It's not explanatory. I'd rather have a scientific explanation that can explain many more things than just thunder. It also explains electricity and magnetism and conductivity and all sorts of other phenomena. So you'd like to have a scientific explanation. But there are things we can't explain by science, and that's where I think you, to be respectful to you, you're saying, I can't understand, or we can't, or Joe Rogan or his experts can't understand how this information called a pyramid, which is highly accurate and designed and advanced, more advanced, and we can't even do it today, right? The argument goes, we couldn't build that today, although I wonder if we could. But we can build one in Las Vegas. You've ever been there? They have that. They have the Eiffel Tower and the Statue of Liberty. But the point is, just because we can't explain it doesn't mean that there is no explanation of it other than, say, a God or an advanced civilization, which basically you're saying is more advanced than us. Therefore, it's kind of like a god. Again, respectfully.
Hey friends, just a short request to ask you to use your thumb while my thumb is occupied to leave a like on this video. And don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us with the algorithm. Now back to the episode.
Some people would say that we are God, and God is in all of us, right? And we're all God.
You could say that. Yeah, you could say that. Although in my religion, so your name's Jacob, right? You're non. Is that can I say that? It's not Ken. So Jacob in the Old Testament in the Torah, his name is changed. He's originally called Jacob, and then he fights with an angel of God. And he beats the angel, which is basically like saying he fought God and won. And his name gets changed to Israel. So the word Israel is synonymous with Jacob. And Jacob, by the way, do you know what it means in Hebrew?
No.
It means ankle. It means ankle because Jacob was a twin.
Literally the ankle.
Yes. So Jacob was a twin. His older brother was called Esav. And Esav was born first. And so they were twins. They came out. And he came out grabbing onto the ankle of his older brother as if he wanted to be the firstborn. Because back then, in biblical times, if you were the firstborn, you got all the riches, all the spoils, everything. You got twice as much money, power, women, everything you wanted. It was always the firstborn. So he wanted to be the firstborn, even as in the womb. So that's the biblical origin of Jacob. That's what it means. But then change to Israel. What does Israel mean? It means fights with God and won. So we have this power. We're kind of like a bit, we can wrestle with God. Now, another interpretation is that like we should always struggle with the concept of God. We shouldn't easily accept that God exists. We should battle and try to come to that through knowledge, not only through faith. We should have faith. We should believe in God or Jesus if you're Christian, but you should wrestle with that concept. And so, yes, we are kind of godlike compared to people 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I mean, imagine COVID without like high-speed internet or Netflix and YouTube and TikTok. It would have been very different maybe it would be better. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, some people would say that the AIDS crisis was COVID without the internet. And
Fauci was involved with both of them. Yeah. I had never heard that. So you mean the AIDS crisis? Yeah, was certainly a very traumatic. Yeah,
where there was a lot of things that they did wrong, and it wasn't so easily detected or publicized online. So some people would say that would be like...
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, so it would
first
spread
attempt.
more...
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
And nowadays, like, we have so much information, so much wrong information and right information, but we live, like, in this information thing where you can just go online and talk and have people talk to you and talk to other people, and it's great and dangerous and crazy, but it's really cool because I feel like
I love it,
can, like, it really made me look for things, and it's much easier than if you have to like go out and find you somewhere in the village, and then like I get to see you and like I can ask you things, right? When I can just like I listen to Joe Rogan for 500 hours, but I've never met the guy. So I don't know, it's amazing. I think we live in I'm a very optimistic guy. I think we live in an amazing time.
I do too.
Where we still have the freedom to talk to each other and get things like blow it out of the way, you know? So
no, I kind of see it the same way. The challenge is, everything is a double-edged sword. You know, it can cut for good or it can cut for bad. How do you prevent, like, have you ever had this experience, like your son comes up to you and like tries to swipe like your face? Like they're so used to like being on screens, at least in my household, and my kids are older, but do you have a strategy or a set plan for when they get old enough for how they're going to combat the challenges of social media when they have one of the world's most famous, influencers, whatever, and you have to balance that because what are you going to say? No, don't go out. It's terrible. You're like, it's a big part of your life.
I don't know. When I look at my parents, I think it would be almost naive to think that I would know their generational struggle that's going to come their way. Because I know my struggle and I know my generational struggle. Yeah. But what they will face, it will be naive of me to think I have the answers, I think, because they will face a whole nother, maybe they have to fight some sort of microchip thing AI, that he doesn't get,
right?
Or he needs to get a certain program in the chip that like Elon makes or somebody else makes, or you don't want to get that chip. Like, I don't know, like, it's so far. Like you said, like explain TikTok to your grandfather, like, or like hate comments, how to deal with hate comments to your grandfather, right? It's very obscure for him. So I think like I think I can only make him as resilient, honest, truthful, and strong person that he will be, once the time comes, he will know how to face his generational problems. I feel like I can make him relentless and strong, but when the time comes, I will not have the answers, I think.
Right, you'll have to equip him.
I will be too old. I'll be too old, If they don't like freshen up all those connections ASAP, I don't know. I'll be too old, I think.
I think that's a beautiful way to think about it. And that kind of puts pressure on you to put them on the right track when you can, because eventually, I mean, my oldest is, just now, he still, loves to be with me and claims I'm, his top 10 no, he says I'm his favorite person, or my wife's his favorite.
How old is he?
Oldest is 13. So, and then we got down to 6-year-old. But the attention that he has, the amount of time we're spending together, and people say like, oh, you shouldn't like brainwash your kids and you shouldn't bribe your kids. No, absolutely not. I think you have to. You have to encourage it. Because like, if it was enough to just convince someone logically, you ever tell your kid to say please or thank you when you're at a restaurant?
Yes and no. I don't know. It's bro. Parenting is
I know, there's no handbook.
I don't know
there's
if
no
I want to be
right?
this kind of boomer that is like, say please, say please. It's also like, sometimes when he questions things and he really pushes your buttons, I feel like it's also beautiful because he's not like this slave yet that is just like bows down and yes, dad, yes.
That's why, what's
yes,
interesting?
Please. Yes, I'll go to bed, sir. Yes, sir. I don't know if I want him even to be like that,
No,
Sometimes he says bad words and we all laugh because we're like, it's just a word. Like, it doesn't harm anybody. If it was in German, you would not even notice, right?
Exactly.
So it's just a thing that like you create, and when you say it to me, it harms me, and I created this whole thing, and
It's a story that you tell yourself. Yeah, I mean, the most common word that a baby will say first is usually no, which I always thought, why is that? Like, not yes, but why is that important? Because they're actually, if you say yes, I'm just agreeing with what you told me to do or what you want me to do. If I say no, I'm asserting my own individuality, and that gives
freedom.
me freedom and sovereignty.
Might be the most freedom you could ever feel is that moment you learn no. Not your driving license and your gun. I think once you know that you can say no to things.
Yes.
Right. Once my son figured out that he cannot go to school, that's when the magic happens, right? When he's like, actually, I can say no to things, you know?
You live for that, right?
I do teach him. I always tell him, like, you can say no to a hug. You don't have to say hi to everybody. You know, like, you can decline if you're not about it.
That's
you know?
right.
Like,
That's
you don't have to admit to this, like, when a big person comes upon you, kind of.
Right, because you're just training them to be subservient and to bow down to authority.
Yeah.
And in fact, the most there's a famous saying about good scientists. So a good scientist is one who believes that other scientists are wrong. Not that they're right. So a lot of people say, "Oh, you're just a gatekeeper." Like I do a lot of debunking videos on my channel. Like people say the moon landing never happened, or this guy Terrence Howard was on Joe Rogan and he made all these statements like 1 × 1 = 2, and which according to mathematics, not true. Or he made a claim that all chemicals have tones and frequencies, and some are bisexual, and factually, objectively wrong. And so I went through and had a conversation with my friend Eric Weinstein about it, and I did a video with by myself about this appearance by this conspiracy theorist on Joe Rogan named Bart Sibrel, who claims that the moon landings never happened. It was faked and staged, and this is like the greatest accomplishment of America. Like I just love it. And so I made a debunking video, and you should see the comments. They're all like, "You're just a gatekeeper. You're a stooge. You just want big science. You're just speaking for NASA and blah, blah, blah. You're a tool. You're a grifter. You're all this crazy stuff." I was just like, no, actually, here's the scientific proof that they went to the moon. It's and not to say that no conspiracies ever happened. That would be an objectively foolish, stupid thing to say. But in this case, you happen to be wrong. You're invested in it for some reason that's not scientific. You want to believe it's true. Or Terrence Howard, I don't know why he's getting into it. He might be, having a mental, he might be a genius, but not because of this. He might be a genius actor. But I love the fact that, like, I can say this, and I get accused of being like a gatekeeper. Like, that's the worst thing. You just don't want us to know the truth. Just like you wanted COVID shot. And I'm like, hey, my kids didn't get COVID shot. like you're talking to the wrong guy. I know I'm purposely, I know you're kind of ambiguous and like you do things like gender-wise and stuff like, I'm ambiguous as like whether I'm Republican or Democrat. Like yes, the answer is yes. Like, I think it's totally stupid to like fix yourself by what you call yourself. Like, oh wait, so I'm Republican, so I only vote for Trump, or I'm Democrat, I only vote for Biden, and I only believe Fauci, and it's actually an ignorant thing to do, to call yourself by a name. Like you're saying about a word, if you, like you made a great point. If you said in German, I wouldn't be offended except if you said my favorite word in German, ambulance. Can you say ambulance to me in German, please?
Krankenwagen.
Krankenwagen. I love that. It's so perfectly
There's
German.
many words for Krankenwagen, I would say.
How do you say a tank, like a military tank? Isn't it like a big
Panzer.
I thought there was like a longer, like a big, like.
There's so many. The thing is, for one English word, I would say you have like 5 German words.
Yeah, it's very, it's very ornate. Yeah,
and it means different things. And
but you made a good point. Yeah, if he said F off in German, I wouldn't care. But
a lot of times I switch to German now.
You do.
I do.
That's smart.
When I'm very angry and I feel like letting it out, and it gives me relief, and it doesn't hurt anyone.
Do it.
It's so funny.
Can you say something?
I call him like Rotzlöffel on the Scheiß Wichser. And he has no idea.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
But I think if somebody was like down the street and they heard you like cursing German,
I know.
To his kid, that would be, they'd call the child services here. They'd be taking him off. But no, you made a good point. So just as you said, is accurate 100% that a word, and it's just a word, it doesn't mean it. So to me, all the more so, if I say I'm Republican or Democrat, that's like even more meaningless than saying the word no or shut up or stupid or F or whatever. So I like to be ambiguous. So people think, oh, you're just this like, you just carry water and card gatekeeping for the scientific elite. I'm just like, screw yourself. If that's what you want to think, fine. But then I'll make a video that's like completely they'll agree with. And so I'm like, you guys are the basket cases, not like all of my audience, but the ones that comment and get irritable about it. And so the scientist believes the most that scientists and science itself has failures. But for all of its failures and flaws, like America, there's no better alternative. There's no better tool to uncover truth and facts than science. Does that mean it's perfect? I mean, is your wife perfect? Are you perfect? No, I could prove to you. My wife got the last perfect man. So there's no, but nobody's perfect. So to expect science is going to be perfect is ludicrous. It's a form of wishful thinking and hero worship that's like magic. But the problem is science makes so many cool things. Like every single thing on this desk, every way that we're communicating, every phone, that all came not just from science, from physics, what I do, the transistor, quantum mechanics, the telescope, the light, the cell phone, that all came from physicists, in some cases astronomer physicists like me, astrophysicists. So email came out of physics. The World Wide Web was invented at a physics institution called the Large Hadron Collider, or the CERN, that's a laboratory in Europe. These are things that most people don't know. But does that mean that we're perfect? No, but people count on us to be always improving and give them new technology because it's massive and it makes this magical transformation. But that happens so rarely. Like it was 400 years between the telescope that Galileo used and the Hubble Space Telescope. You could argue that's just a bigger version of it. Like we didn't invent some new thing. We did, but not for the way that most people would think about it. So science progresses very slowly, but when it makes something cool and useful, like a cell phone, we'll never go back. We'll never, ever go back. I mean, hopefully we don't have some, prepper event, and breakdown in society, but hopefully we'll never go back and we'll only go forward. But another internet, it's not likely to happen in our lifetimes. Probably won't happen for another couple hundred years. And maybe sooner, but I'm not convinced. So appreciate what we have now.
No, and it's all like the perfect is like it's perspective. Same with like happiness, right? Like you said about your wife, like obviously she's not perfect, but for you she's perfect.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like a perspective thing. And same with your happiness, right? You could, and I feel like at the moment there's just this pessimism that everybody thinks everything is going to shits when we live in the greatest time of all times.
It is. I mean, could you imagine if you had to go back? I asked this on Twitter the other day. I said, like, what's the earliest year you could go back and not go crazy knowing what you know about technology? And people were about like 1989, and it wasn't like 1,000 years ago. In fact, if you went back 100 years, you right now, and I don't just mean I'm pointing some random guy in LA, even a homeless guy, who's got just basic needs met. They have probably better access to medical knowledge, medical care if they need it, dental care, housing in some cases, food, calorie density, even athletic opportunities than the King of England had in 1907. I mean, it's incredible. We live in the best age. And the fact that we think that we don't, I think that's a symptom of a weak mind that likes to see the negatives, because you feel good if you predict, everything's crap and the world sucks and everyone's controlling then you outsource your happiness to somebody else. I'm not to blame. It's the government. It's Gavin Newsom. It's the algorithm no, it's you, and you control yourself and your destiny. And that gives me great power and great happiness.
No, and bro, there's palm trees, the sun shines every day.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I can come from Austria, I can learn English, I can get marry a wife here, I can have children that are American, I can talk to the smartest people in the world in a language that I didn't grow up in.
That's amazing, yeah. But you also worked hard. You also, let's not.
I know, but this is paradise. Everybody that is listening to this has this opportunity. This is like if you have iPhone and Wi-Fi and you can make things happen.
Yeah.
It's you're enslaved by yourself mostly. Like we're always like the government, the big pharma, EMFs of my phone. I'm like, last time I had this guy on talking about EMF, and it's really interesting, and I get the point, but I don't want to be a person that lives in being afraid, like a scared person that just any little thing harms your testosterone and no, man. Like, I love life.
Yeah.
I love being here. And I'm powerful. I am the most powerful. My mind is powerful and free.
Yeah.
And I will not let something harm me that easily, And it's beautiful when I go out there. The world, every little thing, every street, every homeless person has, we're all one, and you can see the beauty when you open your eyes, and we live in the greatest time where we can talk to each other and we find a way, even with all this technology, to connect and to share wisdom and to like be in this together. mean, there's nothing better than even like suffering together, kind of.
Yeah, if you could find, a tribe, a collection of people that you have these values for, and even better if you're responsible for them and they're responsible for you. If you make your wife's happiness the most important thing in your life, there's a reason. One of my friends said, is like, there's a reason that it's happy wife, happy life, and that nothing rhymes with husband. Okay, that's a reason, and it's asymmetric. And it's not fair. If you want to be a pussy about it, right? It's not fair that there's nothing like make your husband happy. No, the whole point is that you get the benefits of making her happy and keeping her happy.
That will make you way more happier.
100%.
Yeah, buy yourself a present and then buy somebody else a present, and feel that.
Give charity and do something for other people. Go work in a homeless shelter. Go to a hospital and a cancer ward for pediatric children. I guarantee. I went to a play last night, and it was about the tragedy in Israel on October 7th. Not tragedy, it was evil terrorist attack in southern Israel. And this woman was talking about, she lost her husband, was killed, her son, her mother, and her nephew, who was like a son to her. 4 people in the span of 12 hours on October 7th, all murdered in broad daylight for just the crime of being a Jew and living in southern Israel. And they didn't, they were even sympathetic. They had worked with Palestinians. They wanted a 2-state, so that they're big supporters of Palestine. It didn't matter. They shot them in front of their grandkids. And she survived. And her husband was the mayor of the town, and he had worked to like take care of, poor people when they came in, and even volunteered in the Gaza Strip for the Palestinians. And now all that's gone. And she showed a picture of her son who died, and he looked just like my son. Like I'm emotional now thinking about it. And I was like, my son is also, he's a vulnerable kid. Like he's super sweet, just like so kind, will do anything. He's the only one who never picks on his siblings. His older brother picks on him, but he's like my twin. We joke, he looks just like me as a kid. And I just saw it, and I was just like, there's a reason I'm going to this, and it's not only to appreciate, and empathize with the suffering that she went through. It's to make me appreciate what I have. Like, I don't have to deal with that reality, that horror of just like, I can't even imagine. I know I couldn't deal with it. So, but to know that there are people out there that can deal with it, it just gave me this huge boost. And it made me feel grateful for my kids and my health and their health. But you see those things. And that's why I was driving up here. I saw the homeless. I saw the traffic. And first I said, how much would that homeless guy give to be in my car? I'm stuck in traffic, but he would love to be in the air-conditioned car. Like, why am I complaining I'm going to be 10 minutes late to Ken's house? No. Should look at it. Why am I stuck? There are people in whatever, Siberia, Ukraine, that are getting, shot up. They would love to be here right now in the palm trees and the sunshine, a couple miles from the beach in Hollywood. This is insane. This is like 99% of the world in world history would trade everything they have, kings, queens, monarchs, emperors, to be us right now. So we got to appreciate it. And if we don't, then we're the losers. And I really, truly feel that. And to give my kids that kind of that empathy to know, I do struggle with it because I want them to know how blessed they are. Like, your kid is going to be more blessed than you had it. You struggled. He'll get things that based upon stuff that you earned. So how do you instill that resilience in him? Well, the first thing is you have to have a strategy, which you already do. You have a plan. You have a thought. You've thought about it. A lot of parents just have a baby and what do we do with this thing, right? And some people say, it's the worst thing. And no, you're already ahead of the game because you had a plan. You have intention. You wanted to do it. You want to have a second kid. I always wanted to have a second kid too because I had a brother growing up and he was my best friend. So having brothers are really powerful. And now you guys can have a girl. You have 2 boys. You have the bottom line. You gave him a brother, and they'll be best friends long after you're gone. And they're going to be with each other for their whole lives. We only have them for our lives. So, I'm continually blessed by this. And even though, despite, there's a lot of nonsense, but our happiness, like we talked about earlier, it's in our hands, man.
Yeah, and I think as a man, maybe it's not even happiness. Maybe it's purpose. Your family gives you purpose, and if you see an unhappy man, it's also mostly a man with no purpose.
Yeah.
Because you said everything can make you happen. Everything has the potential around you to bring you happiness, but you need purpose. You need to stand for something, and you need to have a path. And when you have that, the happiness doesn't matter.
Right.
My family matters. And if I can, like you said, if I can make my wife happy, I'll be happy no matter what, right?
Yeah.
It automatically, if I make my kids happy, I'm happy, right?
Exactly.
So your purpose leads you in the right direction. And there's nothing more dangerous or saddener than a man who is lost.
He lives
you
for
know?
himself, cares about himself. Maybe he's addicted to his work or porn or doing whatever stuff on the internet. And it's sad. But let me ask you the final question I ask all my guests. I'm turning the tables on you, my brother.
Good.
So podcast called Into the Impossible. So there's an old quote, and it goes like this. The only way of determining the limits of the possible is to go beyond the limits into the impossible. And I want to ask you, you have 30 seconds with 20-year-old Ken. That's all you got. And you can't tell him to buy Bitcoin, whatever. He won't understand what that means. You have 20 seconds. What do you tell him to give him the courage to do what you've done to go into the impossible?
Man, I think I would go maybe 15-year-old.
Go back? Okay, I'll let you do it. One-time exception.
All right, because, if I'm my teenage self or my young self, before I started Candy Cane, I think once I started Candy Cane with like 21, and that is when I didn't hold back anymore. And I think every young person, or me, myself, young, I would, if I have 20 seconds, I would, first of all, don't take yourself so serious. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you're happy doing it and if you bring positive things to the world, and go for it and don't hold back. There's no right time. The right time is right now. Don't wait on anything that you want to accomplish or that you want to do. And you are everything. You're everyone and you're everything. So whoever you look up to or you think is better than you can become, or even better than that. That is the impossible, right?
That's right.
Not putting yourself in a box or limiting yourself. And I would just encourage myself to I guess do it even faster and even sooner.
That you did, yeah.
Than I did.
It's awesome, man. Well, it's been a pleasure meeting you and coming up here. And I got to come down to San Diego. We'll get you guys a telescope and show you the stars from down south, brother.
It was so nice to talk to you.
Great.
Yeah.